Hey, what's up, man?
Nothing. Let me make some adjustments to my rig here.
Sure.
My wife just, you see my wife just like run out of the picture right there? She's like, fuck this guitar player shit. I am out of here. But cool. Let me get myself into a position where I actually feel like I can be in this. Oh my god, you can't even see my head. I hate these fucking things. You know that? Better. There we go. Look at that.
Sweet. Here we go.
There I am. Hi everyone.
What's going on, man? How's your weekend?
Oh, it's been a long couple of days, man. I have the fullest plate that could ever be like dished out to anyone between like trying to be a dad and trying to run a band and having a tattoo shop and doing all these things. It's like, it's fucking crazy. Like I try to get to the gym every day and that's impossible. So it's been a hectic day and I'm making some videos tomorrow and doing some things. So I just got so much shit going on that it's a lot. But I wanted to catch up with you because
Sure.
I think I got so many things to talk about, and by things I mean guitar stuffs that
Right.
like it's just gonna be it'll be a cool time. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for taking the time, man. I know you're busy.
Hey, you have no idea. But Starbucks gets me through.
Right?
So cool. So what's going on? I'll be honest. Like I think I've watched one of these and like in passing jumped into a bunch of them here and there. But
Mm-hmm.
I am so busy that I don't really know your format. But I kind of love that I don't know it because I love like the whole like surprise question thing. So like it sounds like it's gonna be a good time.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
Blue, Joe Mar's coming to my house tomorrow, Blue. That's gonna be awesome. Cool. Good. So you know what? This is your show. You do the talking. I'm gonna sip some coffee.
No, man. It's I mean, we're pretty laid back here. I got like a general frame that I kind of go with just to kind of keep things semi on the rails, but these have ranged anywhere from an hour to we don't have to do this, but some of them have gone like 3 hours just shooting the shit and hanging out.
So if you know anything about me, I love to hear myself talk. And I also love guitars. So and amps and all of the things that come along with what we do here. So who the fuck knows how long we'll be here.
Hey, I'm free.
Let's go.
But yeah. Well, first things first, man. Um, for anybody who doesn't know, which it'd be weird if you were tuning in and you didn't, uh, we got Patrick Sheridan here from Fit for an Autopsy, one of the arguably one of the two main guys at the helm for the band, I would say.
Yeah, there's always the funny thing, like, which came first, chicken or the egg kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I would say that Fit for an Autopsy started, there was a guy who sings for a band called Aborted Memory in New Jersey. And he had the idea of Fit for an Autopsy as like a little side project thing. So then I joined, and then I called Will, and then Will joined, and then we put a band together around that. So it was kind of like me and this dude Shedlock, and then Will Putney. But then me and Will got real serious with it, and other people didn't. So it kind of like real quick.
Yeah.
And then one day I was in this band called the Day of Pigs, which was like this stoner metal band from New Jersey. And, straight edge guy in a stoner metal band, writing fucking weed riffs or whatever.
Right.
And so Nate Johnson was at this show because he was singing for Sense the Flood. And I jokingly said, like, you should sing for this, like, death metal, deathcore project thing that we're doing. He was like, oh, I fucking love that band. And then he joined, and then Fit started all over again. So it was like a band in 2007, and then it shit the bed by the beginning of 2008. And then by mid 2008, it just took off. Like we were ready, and we started running with it. It was still kind of like a part-time thing at that time, but it just evolved. And we realized we had some cool shit to offer. And then, Will was writing these great songs, and like things just started happening, and here we are. So that's kind of, it's literally like that. Like, I remember the beginning, there's this big blur, and then I know what's going on right now. So that's kind of all I got.
Right. Man, it's a little surreal for me, because I've followed y'all's band for a long time now. It was, I guess, pretty much, I found you guys through Guy Kozwick's Black Market Activities label. You mentioned you guys and Ed Gein and maybe a couple other bands in an interview one time, like maybe Gaza. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there were a ton of bands on the label, so I pretty much went through them all pretty quickly. But yeah, I found that first album, and I've just kind of followed you guys along ever since with the draft, many member changes and stylistic progressions, and
It's funny. That's like the hardest part, right? Like, just to interject, is like, you get these folks that like, oh, I can't wait to be in a band, and then you're living out of a fucking 15-passenger van, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day, and like not making money and being away from your house and your family, and it tests your relationships, it tests you as a person. But the member changes also kind of grew fit for an Autopsy into what it is currently. Like, Nate Johnson's a great singer, but he's only really good at one or two things, and we ended up with a guy like Joe, and Joe is this powerhouse, this full bag of tricks, and then we ended up getting Blue, who I think you did a thing with before, right? Blue was on here, and Blue's awesome, and like, Blue's like a real true metal guy, like, for a lack of a less silly term, that true rockers only bullshit is kind of Blue. He's like that guy. So Blue is one of those dudes that like rounds out the band in the like bringing maybe keeping us within the metal world reigns, like giving us a real scope of what we are as a band in that world, and maybe keeping it a little poser proof, like, don't go too far this way, like, don't go too, you know what I mean? Yeah. Know your roots, kind of thing. And also, he's an incredible musician, great bass player, and he really keeps us on our toes. He's very critical, and if you're in a band, you have to be able to be critical, and critical to the point of like looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, all right, bro, like I'm fucking up, like I got to get it together, kind of thing. So, the member changes have really shaped the band, and Will and I are certainly the first, but I don't know that we're the most important. I think everybody plays a really important role for different reasons. So, not to cut you off too much, but that's kind of the thing with member changes. Sometimes it takes a minute to get your right team. You know what I mean? And I think we've nailed it at this point.
Gotcha. Which, of course, I'm sure everybody, brings their own important contributions.
Sure.
Yeah, I was kind of, which maybe it's more out of humility than anything, but it seems like in interviews or whatever, everybody always wants to attribute the lion's share to Will. But
yeah, I mean, so the thing about the band is this. Will and I started this band together, and when we wrote Process of Human Extermination, we did it like a band. We wrote it together, right? Like a bunch of guys in a studio space working together. But by the time we started writing songs for Hellbound, Will was like, hey, I got this idea. And then Hellbound just turned into this like interesting, like, I guess, growth period for the band that a lot of people don't realize happened. I mean, if you go listen to people think Absolute Hope is our first record. Like, it fucking happens to me. I got your first record, and I'm like, oh, cool. Process of Human Extermination. They're like, oh, no, I thought, because it's the thing that the most people were exposed to at one time, right? It was like the hit for us, the one that popped us off. So when I'm like, oh, man, go check out Hellbound, go check these out, people are kind of shocked about that. And that's kind of cool, but also kind of frustrating because it takes a few years out of the game for us. People don't realize we've been a band for like 16 years, you know? Right. Yeah, Jay, I agree completely, man. Like, it was a huge, like, downshift, like, you know, like a hit, like something happened. And then I was like, oh shit, this is great. And then Will was like, I have like 9 other songs ready for the next record. And then I started realizing this is Will's passion project. Like, this is Will's, he loves to write music, you know? And we decided we wanted Fit to be a band that could be a bigger band and could do bigger things. But with his, I guess, you know, producing engineering career, well, the Hell on Earth EP, we kind of touched on already.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like watching these questions scroll up as we're talking,
Sure.
trying to multitask.
Yeah.
But so then it became a thing like, all right, I'm going to be the guy to keep the team together on the road. I'm going to do the logistics stuff. I'm going to go out on tour for 6-7 months out of the year. And Will is going to do the majority of the writing. And it's not that he doesn't involve us in it or we don't have any say, because that's a very untrue thing to say, because we all write, record, and contribute to things all the way from lyrics to riffs to solos, leads, drums. I like this part. I don't like that part. Like, hey, take this part and flip it around. Like, but Will is the main writer. So it's not necessarily that he does all the on the ground stuff, but if it wasn't for Will, there wouldn't be the music that there is. And if it wasn't for the team on the road, the music wouldn't get out to anybody. So no one's really more important than the other one. But sure. I mean, Will is the creative, like, force behind Fit for an Autopsy. And I don't mind saying that. Number one, he's my best friend. Number two, I was the one that didn't want him to leave the band in a very hard way. I wanted to do a project with one of my best friends. And number three, bro, I mean, the dude won a fucking Grammy. Like, he's fucking incredible. Like, how do you argue with a guy that right. is that creative? You know what I mean? Like, there's always one person in the band that's got the drive. It's just this one person doesn't happen to tour with us 6 months a year. But I talk to him every single day. Before I got on the phone with you, we were talking about what we're going to do for some merch stuff on this tour that's coming up in Europe. So, you know, it's a give and take, but he is certainly the creative juice. You know what I mean? So.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for the insight on that. It's always been a pretty interesting dynamic, and I don't know if any given band could pull that off as well as you guys do, but I mean, it's certainly very interesting. When it comes to the material that you write or the contributions that you make songwriting wise, what would you say, which obviously you guys kind of have your own style, so you're working within those perimeters, but mm-hmm. how would you interpret those perimeters, or how would you interpret maybe the inspirations for a lot of Fit songs? At least
there's no rules. There's no rules. Like, you know, there's no constraints or guidelines. If we want to do like some lo-fi hip hop shit, we're going to fucking do it. It doesn't matter. I mean, the chances of us doing that are, you know, Pat from Fit for an Autopsy said they're going to do a lo-fi record. No, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, it's on Metal Sucks already.
What happened? Yeah, it's fucking Metal Sucks is putting it up right now. Yeah. They're typing a story about it. But no, like, it's much different than that. Like, everybody will say things like, oh, they sound like this band. And Gojira is the staple that we get all the time, right? Everybody says, they sound like Gojira. Well, first of all, yeah, fucking cool, thanks. Like, let's sound like one of the best bands in metal. But the thing is while we are certainly influenced on some levels by Gojira, we're also influenced by Gojira's influences. Remember,
sure,
46 years old. I'm 46.
Right.
So I've been listening to bands like Morbid Angel and Suffocation and, you know, all of the bands that inspired the early Gojira stuff. I mean, you go back and listen to like Way of All Flesh, mm-hmm. and a lot of that stuff is like straight up Morbid Angel worship, like done in a much more modern way, where you got like this Morbid Angel meets Meshuga meets like, I mean, you can hear tons of influences in that. And those are all things that I'm influenced by, and that's why I like that band. So you know, there's some things that for sure were influenced by that band, and mainly it's their ability to collectively carry a bunch of different influences and still make it sound original, right? So to me, that's really important. And then also, like, we go into worlds that Gojira goes nowhere near. I do love Carcass, but you know, they're those worlds that, you know, like we dabble in like post rock, and we dabble in like weird atmospheric shit, and
Sure.
we do things that a lot of bands don't do. I mean, we got that song Two Towers got compared to like some Deftones kind of vibes, and I heard a little bit of Tool when I first heard that. Like, it's got this thing that happens in that song where like it's got like this, the beginning of that song's got this like Deftones meets Tool meets Fit for an Autopsy meets whatever kind of thing going on, and like sometimes it just happens that way, you know. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, people are influenced by their influences. That's why it's called an influence, you know. So I don't know that we have limitations. I mean, we have some constructs that we like to stay inside, but for the most part, you know, I don't care if it's fucking cool and I like it. I want it to be on a record, you know, and people are going to love it or hate it. And that's, you know, I can't count the amount of times that I've heard people be like, I like their older stuff better. And I'm like, well, that's great. Like, I appreciate that, but that record exists, man. You know,
Yeah.
like, I want to, you can eat pizza every day, but it's got to be different. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where no one wants to make the same record fucking 14 times, you know?
Some
And
people do.
well, it doesn't always work out so
Yeah.
well, you know? But for us, we want to improve and grow, and we want to make the genre better and different, and we want to share our influences with people and pay homage to the bands that created what we do. So there's a lot of bullshitting going on, dude. Like, a lot of people being like, oh, well, you know, we don't sound like that band, and we created this. And I'm like, no, I mean, Disembodied was a band in the 90s, and you sound exactly like that band. And, you know, like, you just don't know who that band is, and you're borrowing from the people who borrowed from them.
Right.
And that's just how it evolves, you know? That's how things work. So I don't know if we have a lane that we'll ever stay in, but we certainly have, like, an image that we want to project with our music. And it's dark, and it's angry, and it's violent, and it's sad sometimes. But I mean, yeah, it is what it is. You know, we write about real life, and, you know, whatever real life dictates at that moment is what we're going to do.
Well, I'd say one of the only real comparisons that I would make with you guys and anybody else, sorry, was mainly just the only thing constant is that you guys are constantly progressing from album to album. Like, and whenever people do try to draw lines and comparisons from one band to another, normally just kind of shows to me that, well, you just really don't listen to a whole lot of different bands then, do you? Like, because there's more than just two bands that do like cool staccato riffs or atmosphere or whatever. But but I mean, like Gojira or Mastodon or Behemoth, you guys are, it's almost like it's like y'all are adamant on not doing the same record twice, which is refreshing, you know? Because there are some bands that are good at sticking real close to their roots without necessarily repeating, like Cannibal Corpse maybe.
I think Cannibal Corpse is a band that, especially recently, like, has stepped outside the box like a handful of times. Like, that Violent Unimagined record and Torture. And, like, there's like a handful of those records that are like, whoo, like, holy shit, you know? And there's a couple of tracks that are like outside the box for them, and I love that. I think it's funny where people are like, oh, that band's got one thing that they do, and then I'm like, man, I mean, Eric Rutan is now in that band, and that dude doesn't fuck around with bullshit.
No.
You know what I mean? There's a reason why he's playing in that band. I mean, he was in some like really important bands, Eric Rutan. You know what I mean? And like, so like when you're passing around players like that, like there's a reason why. Sure. You know, I think Obituary is a really good example. It's funny I'm wearing the hat. I just realized it, but that's a really good example of a band that stuck to its roots and did it in a way where it was successful. Yeah. Right. I think to me they have a couple of albums that really stand out, but like the End Complete is like a very different animal for that band, and it's just this progression. And I think that kind of was like the big pivot point for that band. It's my favorite record by them. But I mean, even their newer stuff is like, it's very much to their roots with just like a modern spin, you know? But it's interesting, you know what I mean? To see what happens to bands and how boring it can fucking be to hear that same over and over again.
Right.
You know? And people say like, oh, I wish Necrophagist would make a new record. And I'm kind of like, I think maybe no, because if it was the same, I think I would be bummed. You know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I get bummed when I buy a record and it's not the same. You know? Or I mean, it is the same rather. Meshuga is another great band to look at in that world, like from record to record, like insanely different. You know? Yeah. Like, if you look at the difference between like Destroy, Erase, Improve, and then Chaos Sphere, and then Catch 33, and then that IEP, and like you just keep going through. And I mean, going back to like the Nun EP, like all of it, something crazy's happening different on every record. And like Kolos got real slow and weird. Obscen's like the pinnacle for me. Like that's where it all kind of came together. And now they chose a different path. This new record's like slower. And some people are like, oh, it's kind of boring. And I'm like, man, you're missing it. Like you're missing some stuff here. So I don't know. My influences always change. You know, I mean, At the Gates is another one. That from that Gardens of Grief record to fucking all the way through like Terminal Spirit Disease is sick. Slaughter of the Soul is sick. Like so many great records. And they're all a little different, you know?
Right. Which I haven't really delved into the new. Is the new At the Gates album? It's out, isn't it?
Yeah, they're really good. They don't miss anymore, man. Like some people are like, oh, you know, his voice and this, that, and I'm like, man, the dude's like fucking 55. Like he's been screaming into a mic since he was 19. You know.
After they put out At War with Reality, it really hooked me back in. And
that record's good.
And I love the difference between that and To Drink from the Night itself. When it gets this really dark, kind of gothy, sort of melodic side to it. I don't know how else to describe it.
It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's awesome. Yeah.
And when I say goth, I don't mean like Cradle of Filth, like eyeliner kind of goth. I mean just, I don't know. It's just got this. I think it was one of the guys on, I think like Blaine on Banger TV or something, was doing some like one term he uses when he's doing album reviews is he's tries to differentiate between goth and gothic. And it's like it sounds stupid, but it does make kind of sense. You know?
Yeah. I think when you say goth, it's like when you say death metal. Like death metal isn't all the same. Yeah. Like you got like bands like Dying Fetus and, you know, fucking Suffocation. And, you know, I mean, I think Fetus is like a staple for that middle of the road death metal because it's super slammy, but it's also extra technical. It's kind of guttural, but they explore a bunch of different things. And then you have like your slam bands, which are like the, you know, usually like the Caveman, more simple riffs and like more straightforward, like Blues in Dysentery. They're like super heavy slam band, like where it almost like some of it almost borderlines that like simplistic hardcore thing, but in a much more death metal way. Like, so when you say goth, I mean, you could be talking about like, you know, some people in like all black, like dressed like clothing and makeup on their eyes and fucking 65 dog collars and like doing that kind of thing. Or you could be talking about just like dudes that burn churches and like make real evil sounding shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it kind of goes back and forth, and typo negative could be the happy medium.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it really depends, dude. You know, I think there's a lot of room for interpretation in all of it.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we've nerded out on metal, and we did the origin story. So let's do what a lot of people have probably tuned out for already, and that's talk about gear.
I love gear. I love it, and I have a lot of it.
Well, where do you want to start? Because I mean, you got how many customs and shit like that?
All right, here's where we'll start. Let's start with what I don't have at my house right now.
Okay.
Which is my touring rig, because that's up in New Jersey in our storage, well, in our studio in New Jersey. What I don't have is my touring rig, which is believe it or not, this tour, I took oh, my dogs are barking. I took a 5150 Iconic.
Okay.
Okay. And was blown away. 5150 is like the iconic, it's funny I use that word again. It's like the tone that you expect when you hear a good metal band. Like, to me, if I'm going to go to a festival and play a festival and I'm going to borrow gear or something's going to be like loner or there's a backline, I'm hoping for a 5150 because it makes your day easy. It's just like a couple little adjustments and it's good to go. Whereas like for a very long time, I was using Mesa Boogie stuff, and which I still love, but the dual rectifier is a different animal in itself where you really have to learn how to EQ that thing. You have to spend some time. A 5150, man, you go in a Guitar Center or whatever your local music store is, flip it on, scoop the mids a little bit, do a couple things, fuck with the resonance and the presence knobs, and boom, all of a sudden, you're on the road to a good tone, right?
Yeah.
And so the Iconic, and you can see over here, I have an OG 5150 sitting right there, right? So I know the amp. I've been using the amps for years. And I was blown away by how great that fucking $999 head sounded. I have all these crazy expensive things, and I put that bitch in my rig, and I put an OD in the front. I put couple of effects through the back, a noise suppressor in the back, and a Zool gate in the front, and cranked it. Loudest fucking 80 or 90 watt amp I've ever heard in my life, and right where I needed it to be. So that whole you got to spend $1 million to sound good is not always the truth. Sometimes there's some things floating out there that are very reasonably priced that do the job.
Hell yeah.
Since we're talking about that, let's talk about another really cool thing that I recently got, which is sitting right next to me, which is the godfather, in my opinion, of the death metal sound. Oh. This is an Ampeg VH140C. If you are a death metal guitar player and you don't know amp, you're fucking lying to yourself. Suffocation, Dying Fetus, a little bit of Morbid Angel for a little while. Tons of hardcore bands, tons of metal bands have used this thing to achieve that tone. Actually, let me flip this back around and talk about something cool. This guy here, the Ultra Mid. It does a thing when you scoop it, it scoops it like no other thing. And when you push it, it pushes it in a way that you don't expect. This thing, you don't even need to run a pedal in front of this amp. You don't need an OD. It just does the fucking thing. It's got a built-in reverb, which is actually really, really good. It's got a chorus, which I'm fucking still not sure why there's a chorus in this amp. It would have been sick if it didn't have a chorus in it, but there is a chorus nonetheless, and it does do something cool, especially for clean stuff, which surprisingly enough, this clean channel reminds me of those Roland jazz choruses.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember those back in the day, but people swear by them for clean stuff. And this has that very, I guess, programmed clean sound, which sounds kind of weird to say, but it's a very stale, very exact, like there's no give, but it does a cool thing, which a lot of players liked, especially out of those jazz choruses. So that's a cool head. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to mess with one of those, but they're really fucking sick.
No, they're great. Like Headroom for Infinity.
God, it's insane.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I know at that time, Ampeg and Crate were owned by the same company. So Crate had some Ampeg, like cheaper Ampeg clones.
Yeah.
I owned one at one time, one of the Crate GX series.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Yep. They had those and the Blue Voodoo for like a hot minute was the tube amp to get if you couldn't get a 5150. The Crate Blue Voodoo series stuff for like 2 or 3 years were just like sizzle boxes, man. They were hot as shit and they were loud and they did the job. The cabinets were like made out of like balsa wood and plywood, and they had like my first Sony speakers in them, so they just never sounded good. But if you took one of those Blue Voodoos and threw it on top of, man, I'm going back. Randall did an 18-ply birch cab, 412, that was a little bit bigger depth-wise, not height-wise, but depth-wise, than a lot of the other cabs. And Mesa Boogie, like, had the oversized recto cabs. So those two cabs were just, like, kind of similar in tone, where you got that, like, you didn't get that woofy kind of bottom end. You got that, like, gunky, that gunk kind of thing, you know? And when I say that, I saw your face light up because you know the difference. You don't want the vroom, vroom kind of thing. You want that gunk kind of thing. And when you heard it, you knew it. So the VH140C or the Blue Voodoos or even, man, Randall had a couple of solid state heads. I fucking forget what it was. Kirk from Crowbar is still using them to this day. And
RG?
Yeah, the RG fucking, they did like a 150. They did like a 300 watt one for a while. And those things sound sick. So that was like the thing in the early to mid 90s. And then you were either using that or a valve state, because those Marshall valve states did a thing too.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I remember seeing Human Remains play in like the early 90s. I was in high school, and they were using valve states in the Marshall cabs with Ibanez 7 strings. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it sounded so crazy, you know? But yeah, cool. I love that era. And then, you know, you had that era, and then we go into this era, which this is a 5152, the Signature. And this was just gifted to me, actually, by a buddy of mine. And that thing is, it's a 1998, and right now it needs a lot of work. Like, I'm going to send it in and have it recapped and have a bunch of the pots replaced, but it still works. And when it wants to sound good, it does. But when it doesn't, it fucking doesn't. Like, it keeps having like a weird volume drop.
Oh.
And so I'm not sure if it's like a tube issue or what it is, but I'm going to send it out and put like a few $100 into it. And just because I want to keep it, there's a lot of history, you know. It's been on the road with a handful of cool bands. And then under that, you can see, let me close this case. You can see I got one of the EVH EL34 Stealth cabs right there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'm using now live. I'm using EVH cabs and the EVH heads, the 5150. Or I have an EL30. The EL34 is in Ohio at a friend's house, but I have an EL34 5150. We also have the Stealth 5150, and I like that a lot too. But I haven't decided which one I like the best. But I think that Iconic might win because, like,
Really?
yeah, I mean, dude, think about it. Like, what's better than having a $900 thing that sounds as good as a $3,000 thing?
True.
And there's a few bells and whistles that it doesn't have. The fuck do I need a super clean channel for?
Yeah.
I'm a fucking metal band. Like, I'm not going to use that. You may at home or if we're recording, but like, I just need something that cleans up a little bit so it's not quite as heavy, that I can get an almost clean tone. We don't ever use a real clean tone. It's an almost clean. It's that partially clean tone. And then I need a ripper tone. And it does that. So, and you know what else? I like playing gear live that kids can afford. Like,
yeah,
a lot of people can't afford a $4,000 guitar head. I have a fucking, one of the ones we're going to talk about today, I have sitting here. It's like $4,000. Like, sounds awesome. But I take this out and play it, and then kids believe good live tone is only attainable with a 4,000 watt amp or $4,000 amp. You know, they don't realize that. And this is something I swear by. If you spend enough time with something, you can make it sound good. Right?
Yeah.
And what do we got here? What's this? Try a PRS empty. Yeah. Those PRSs are great. Those fucking, that's the, what's his name? Mark Tremonti. Yeah. Those things are sick. But I don't agree that it has a rectifier low end. I think it's more like an Archon.
Okay.
And I think an Archon is more like a 5150.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Because they're going to share those things. And I think the Archon's a sick amp that people miss. I have one of those too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sick amp. I actually got like a crazy deal on that thing by accident. So that thing, I mean, it's a beast, but it's a tricky, sensitive, like little baby. Like it gets mad and it's over. So, you know, I think that the 5150 Iconic is going to live in my rig for a long time. And I think Tim is interested too, and Will wants it also. You know, hang on. What do we got here? YouTube doesn't help. Reviewers swear by certain amps and that are paid. Okay. So okay, Jay, this is something we need to discuss. It's the fault of the consumer as well. And here's why. You go online and you watch your review. I think there's a lot of great people out there. I think Ola's awesome at it. I think Ben Eller actually has some really good opinions on some things. I think Fluff is great. Fluff's got some great opinions on things. And yes, these guys do get paid to review these things. And that's part of their job. They're spending their time. They're spending their man hours and putting these things into their guitars, putting the heads together. They're doing the whole thing. They're making a video, spending their time editing, and they're giving their fan base, they're giving the product exposure to their fan base. So there is a need for a money exchange. But no matter what you do, it is a video of an amplifier with a microphone into a processor, into a computer, into a DAW, into, you know, an EQ, into, it is still a fucking video.
Right.
The only way to truly know if you like something or not is to get up off your ass and go to the local music store, plug the fuck in and crank it, or go to a show and grab somebody like me who would love to talk to you about gear, who would love to sit down and say, yeah, man, this is what I'm using. You go talk to people who have seen my band play. I've had people say, dude, that guitar's great. And I just take it off and fucking hand it to them. And I'm like, go ahead, check it out. And they're like, whoa, what? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. They're like, this is fine. And I'm like, so what? I beat the shit out of it on stage every night. You're here. You're watching my band play. If it wasn't for you, no one would give a fuck about me. So here, share this thing with me. Go ahead, check it out. And that's the only way. People like you guys going out and trying it. And just coming up and asking us, hey, why do you use that thing? You know, why do you prefer that thing? And also remember that whole, there's a story out there. I'm pretty tight with a guy who worked pretty closely in the industry with Eddie Van Halen. He's a guy I met through just working with companies. And we became buddies. And he's a ripper guitar player and just like a really genuinely awesome human being. And one day we were talking, and he was telling me the story about how, what the fuck is his name? The dude's kind of a douche, but he's a guitar player guy. And he's like in the media being like super pushy about like his right-wing agenda and all this shit. But fucking Ted Nugent. That's who it was. Right. Fucking turd. So Ted Nugent is on tour with Eddie Van Halen. And this is in the fucking 80s, right? Yeah. So Eddie let Ted play through his rig. And it sounded like shit. Right? Why did it sound like shit?
Right.
Here's your tone. This is some way. All this rig shit that we're talking about, just make these sound better or worse. So Eddie's tone was great for Eddie. Ted couldn't get a good tone with Eddie's rig. It just didn't work for him. Doesn't mean he can't play guitar, because as much as I think he's a fucking tool bag, he's a very good guitar player, right? Can't fucking fix your personality, but the motherfucker can play guitar. Sure. So the tone is this combination of your gear and your playing ability and your confidence behind what you're playing. If you don't have confidence in your rig and it doesn't feel good, it's over for you. You're going to sound terrible. So go play the pickup guitar, pedal, fucking amp combination that stands out to you. Go out and see live bands play. Spend the fucking money on the stuff. And if you don't love it, that's what reverb is for. Flip that bitch over and go get something else. Because your rig is only half of your tone. And that's as much as you'll get out of it. I think maybe less than half, but I mean, you know, we can argue about that all day.
I do want to throw in just one little tidbit, and just in conjunction, obviously, yeah, for anybody out there that's maybe wrestling with this idea, he's right. It absolutely starts with the player. That doesn't mean that's all it is. No, not at all. And we certainly don't need to spend a lot on gear. You just need to know how to work with what you got. And if it can't, you know, maybe you're not, if you're going for like 5150 or rectifier, you know, metal tones, you might not get it with a Fender Twin Combo and a Boss DS1. So
you'll get a cool tone. It's just going to be different.
Yeah, you'll get like a cool, like early grave tone, maybe. You know,
dude, how good of a band is that?
Oh,
but
so good.
I mean, everything you're saying is true, and I think there's a really easy way to sum what you're saying up. And what you're saying is, there's a bunch of ways to get the same tone, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be realistic about the truth in what that means. Like you're saying, if you want to sound like Meshuga, you don't go out and buy a Fender Twin. If you want to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, you don't go out and buy a fucking PRS Archon or a 51. There's just some rules. Like we all are aware of the rules. But the difference is whether you're willing to spend the time with the things that you buy to achieve this, you know, godlike tone that you're looking for. Exactly. The reason that Marty Friedman sounds like Marty Friedman is because Marty Friedman knows what works for him. He's played it all. You know, I have a JP2C somewhere with a bunch of fucking dust on it that I haven't played in a couple of years. And that amp is what it is because it's designed for a guy who knows what he plays and how to play it, right? When I got it, it took me fucking 4 days to even crack into a decent little bit of tone. And everybody says, Fit for an Autopsy's tone is fucking sick. It's because I'm 46 and all I've done for the past fucking 30 years is break my fucking face on amplifiers and pickups and combinations. It's fun. This is the fun of it. It's not supposed to be plug and play. There's like this whole beautiful thing that happens when you fucking ring out that fucking D flat or that fucking ugly ass chord that you're gonna play or some gross shit, and it's or D minor I should say, and it sounds perfect, and you're like, this is the one, right? So fuck what everybody else says. Spend some time discovering the things you like and use the things that people say for a platform, which is what I think you're saying.
Yeah.
But then run wild. It's just fucking time and money. And if you spend money on something that you don't like, there's going to be a million people out there that want what you're trying to get rid of. So, and sometimes you even make money on the deal. So it's not so bad. But I agree with you, dude. I agree.
Yeah. And and then just for good measure, I'll throw in a personal gripe with people. Dial your gear in for the context of, if you're out playing, if you're at home, do whatever. If you're out playing in a band, dial in for the band mix. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've seen so many awesome, like, honestly, very talented bands that they still dial in their amps like they're the 15-year-old kid in their bedroom going for the, I don't know, like a Metal Zone super scooped tone. And they're like killing it and just ripping, but it just sounds like awful. Yeah.
White noise.
Yeah.
Well, this is something we talk about pretty often. And this is a great subject that I think a lot of people don't talk about enough. So we're taking these mid-bass instruments and we're tuning them way too low, and we're creating a tone that's not natural for the instrument. So we're trying to create these frequencies with these guitars that are technically bass frequencies, right? So a guitar is an upper mid-bass instrument because there's only enough wood to vibrate in a certain way. And once you start stepping past like a 27-inch scale, it becomes a bass. It's technically a bass, right? With 6 strings,
Sure.
right? So you're trying to create these frequencies that don't really exist in the world of that instrument. And then you're taking all the important parts and you're fucking scooping it out. You're saying, let me scoop these mids and push my low end. So then what happens? In your bass player, you're tripping all over the bass player's frequency. And then it becomes mud live because everything's beating the shit out of each other. One of the reasons that Fit sounds so good is we're willing to stay in our lane with the tones that we're creating. I do not scoop my mids back that much. I push my mids just a little bit. Let the guitar do what it's supposed to do. Tim and I have a little bit of a different thing that we do live. I tend to be a little bit more scooped and a little bit more thumpy than Tim. Tim's a little warmer and rounder, but it fills the frequencies for each other. You don't sound the same, and that's good for, especially for a sound guy, because then you can blend the two tones together and create a bigger tone. And then Blue's running right up the middle with the frequencies that he's supposed to be in, and our kick is tuned to the bass. So everything has its place, and there's a place for everything. And once you start tripping over each other frequency-wise, it doesn't matter how good your tone is. And when I play my guitar by myself on stage, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I could fucking get a little bit more crystally highs or whatever. But then I remember, like, I'm in the mix, and in the mix out front, it sounds killer, you know? So don't forget, sound guys have a job. Sound girls, sound people, they have jobs. And it's important to allow them to do their job. It's important to allow the person playing the bass to make the bass frequencies happen. And what you're saying is not discussed enough. It is so frustrating to hear a record and be like, man, this band's fucking great. I can't wait to see him. And then you just hear the whole fucking, it's like, well, it was a waste of $16, you know, buy a t-shirt and go home now. You know what I mean? And like, so yeah, I agree with you completely, man. That's a really good point.
And somebody chimed in about Pantera and centering the band, the mix around Dime's guitar tone, and kind of and obviously we're talking a very extreme exception to the rule. Bringing
But
up
I don't know if that, do you think that's true? I think
um,
every person in that band has unreasonable tone.
yeah,
I don't think, listen to the drums, even the bass, like everything was very programmed and polished on purpose. I don't think it's centered around any one thing because
I think they mean like to like everybody is kind of working to complement each other, like that they are maybe kind of tweaking their instrument to work for that very very specific sound and mix, which
I sure, yeah,
which
but I
Dime
think
did
that
scoop. He did
on
scoop his tone a lot, huh?
every instrument sounds unreasonable.
Yeah, but and I will add, yeah, like Dime definitely scooped his tone, but
Sure.
if you deep dive into his rig enough with like the Furman PQ4, I think is what it was called, and he used that in an MXR 10, not a 10 band, like this, like maybe a 5-band EQ or something.
Yeah. No, it's a 10. It was an MXR 10 band in the loop, right? That was the deal with that.
I can't. It was, he used two different EQs. I remember that, and he used
Yeah.
two different gates at the front and back.
Mm-hmm.
So even if like his amp was pretty scooped, he dialed mids back in using the EQs. That's his.
It
Yeah,
looked like really bad drawings of seagulls. You know, like a check mark.
sure.
Yeah, it's true. Um, but like, what's crazy about Dime is like, weirdly enough, his leads and his solos almost sound warm,
Yeah.
and it has to be pickup, all pickup, you know, because if you listen to the difference between his rhythm tones, which were like ice pick sharp,
Mm-hmm.
and then he gets some kind of warmth at it. Maybe it's his hands, maybe it's the pickup. I don't know, but man, like when he does some of those, like the leads and floods and like some of that stuff, like it sounds warm to me, and I'm like, how the fuck does he do this? And live, he does it too. So it's like they're just fucking unreasonable. It's unreasonable, dude. I'll say it all day long. Like they ruined studio tone for everyone because everyone has these unbelievably unreasonable expectations of what they can get out of their rigs in the studio and live.
Yeah.
And not to mention like they were fucking tighter than a frog's asshole. You know what I mean? Like that band was fucking tight, like crazy.
Oh yeah. Which somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you know. There was a story that I also love Jay Yenger from White Zombie's tone.
Sure.
When it comes to like 90s metal tones, him and Dime are, kind of they're up there in like the upper echelon for sure. But and they're surprisingly very similar.
Yep.
Is like Jay's tone. I mean, his rig was essentially the same as Dime's on one half with the Randalls and a lot of the same rat gear and even the same cabs, like the Randalls with the Jaguar speakers. But then he also ran the Rev F rectifiers, I think, and the Mesa, and the rectifier cabs. And he was very, very like meticulous in the studio. And I swear, I thought it was Pantera was recording in the same studio at the same time as them. Maybe it was somebody else. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, and it was the same producer. I guess it would have been what was it, Ulrich Wild?
Okay.
I think, and I know he definitely worked with White Zombie. But I think they pulled Jay in to their session, and Ulrich Wild was giving Jay a hard time, like, oh, see, he's like, see how awesome they sound? That's just an SM57 on the cab, not all the extra EQ in and all blah blah. And Jay's just like, yeah, but mine still sounds better.
Right, we're all subjected to our own opinion.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about the tone that was happening in those eras. Like, I mean, you can go back to like Fear Factory and
Yeah.
like you know what, Fear Factory's first records dropped in like the early 90s, right? And I mean, when did Demanufacture drop? I was in high school, and I'm old as shit. So like, you got to be talking like early 90s, right? Are you fact checking that right now?
I am.
See,
Now I'm here.
Manufacture or Soul of a New Machine. Like, see when those records dropped. I'm gonna say it's like early 90s, like pre, like.
Let me see. Demanufacture was released in June of 95.
Okay, so, and then check Soul of a New Machine. I think that's their first record.
Recorded and released in 92.
Okay, so there you go.
Damn.
So now we're like pre Crazy Dime Tone, right? Because when did Cowboys drop?
I want to say that one was 93 or 94.
Right. So you had Dino already getting that super manufactured sound.
90. Recorded recorded in 89 to 90. Damn.
Really? So then we're talking like same era. Them dudes were competing for tone between 90 and 92, 93.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what was happening then. And then there's another band called Diesel Machine from California, also that kind of tone. And then you had bands like Machine Head that were definitely taking nods from that tone, but still a little bit more towards the traditional side.
Yeah.
Right. I think Machine Head had like a really, 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 Jason, you're right, it was 90. So you're talking about like this whole grouping of bands that were creating this thing. And for Fear Factory, more than anybody, they had that whole industrial side of things going on. So it made sense that they had like a computery, very sterile sounding guitar tone.
Oh, yeah.
And like a lot of those bands were doing that, you know. What about well, we'll get to the Carcass stuff in a minute. You gotta be easy on Carcass. That's my fucking shit right there. You don't get better than Carcass. And we'll talk about those records too. But well, all right. So we're pretty deep into this whole like Ampeg VH140C because I feel like that's that tone, right?
Sure.
Like that scoopy tone. So let's talk about another thing that I have sitting here. I have something that Will conned me into buying, and I'm glad he did. But this motherfucking thing is all of the perfect parts of a dual rectifier with none of the bullshit. This motherfucker right here, I got all the bells and whistles, so I spent all the extra money. It's got, you know, channel switching. It's got this is a built-in overdrive. And then over here we have like some gain switches, things like that. There's a built-in gate in the back. You have your, you know, sorry, it's so dusty. This fucking room sucks. And then here, this is a sizzle switch. It gives you a couple of little switches to kind of move through like tone shifting where it gets a little sharper. And you got your rumble and your sharp, which is just resonance and presence, which is like that same thing that you get in the 5150 thing. So now this is what we're talking about. Now we're talking about your boutique-y kind of head, right? So this does a bunch of stuff that my other shit can't do. But it doesn't do a thing that I necessarily need live, right? So I got a lot of bedroom shredders out there that go out and buy these $6,000 amps and claim to sound better than other people. But I dare you to bring that amp out, put it on stage next to me, and get a better live tone. I just don't believe it. I believe that I can get. I agree that you're not going to end up getting certain things, but it's one of those. It's one of those things to me that I read the comment. My dog's jumping at the back window, jacked up on Starbucks, flashing your driftwood. I mean, listen, I'm not up on anything quite yet. I drink coffee all day long, but I'll flash my driftwood whenever I feel like flashing my driftwood. But you know, it's one of those things where if you spend enough time, like, oh, Axe Effects, Kemper, they suck. I mean, they don't. There's people getting great tones out of those things because they're spending the time with it the right way. So you give me a fucking valve state, and I'll give you a tone that I can pull off live and make it sound good. And that's a fucking $350 amp. You know, I just don't believe in the hype anymore. This drift was incredible. Do I need it to sound good live? Mm-mm. Do I want it? Yes. Yes. And am I willing to pay the money for it? Yes, I am willing to pay the money for it. So the Driftwood's incredible. It's a very good amp. It sounds fucking great. It was worth every penny. I would buy it 2 more times over if I felt like I wanted to have 2 more of them. So I really like that. But again, man, like, can I achieve a similar tone from something else? Absolutely. Is it going to be as fun? Maybe not. You know, sometimes I'll different shit. What's your main amp?
Well, I almost sold you what my main amp was. And that was that Rev F dual rectifier.
I should have bought that. I should have. But, man, I got amps, dude. And right now I'm kind of investing in guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, those are great amps. Did you end up selling it?
I did. Good. And I now have a Kemper, which, I mean, you know, some of my followers or friends or, you know, gave me some shit, like you would probably expect, considering I have arguably one of the grail amplifiers out there. But
I mean, listen, all opinion based.
Sure.
Because to me, a 50 block letter is the grail.
Oh, yeah?
Sure. Those amps have been used on the most important records ever. Also, Mesa Boogie dual rectifier. Any version, I mean, there's the saggy, shitty section in the 2000s that we don't talk about. That's
sure. Yeah.
But the early Rev F stuff, the Rev G stuff, like that stuff is sick. And then the new thing that they got going on, I can't lie, those fucking multi-watts, yo, they're real close, dude. It's real close. So, you know, arguably the Kemper is just a photocopy of that. I'm sure you have a tone in there that sounds like what you owned.
Oh, I nailed it.
Right.
I
but
absolutely nailed it.
You also have 200 other amps in there.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I understand it. I get it.
I explicitly went in with the goal of trying to recreate, which I, you know, through friends who had profiles that they were more than happy to share with me, as well as stuff that I bought through Amp Guru, because he has ridiculous stuff.
Sure.
He had a really sick Rev F dual rectifier. So I think he bought it off of I think he bought his off of DL from Acacia Strain, or formerly of Acacia Strain. Sorry, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I loaded that up, and it was. Of course, he has a bunch of profiles with boutique pedals already ran in, like plug and go, essentially. But I specifically went for the unboosted. I just want the dry rectifier because I want, you know, my pedals and overdrives to run into it, and run through my cabinet that I'm used to running through. And I couldn't believe that it sounded exactly like my old rig. And because I've experimented and tried different stuff out, like profiles of a Driftwood Purple Nightmare, the Omega stuff, the Cameron CCV or whatever it is, the Cameron stuff, like boutique stuff I could never afford. And I like it better than my old rig now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Take that great tone that you had that was like maxed out in your EQ settings, and now you have this whole other thing. That's your baseline.
Yeah.
And you get crazy. There's so many reasons to like the Kemper, dude. The only thing that makes me a little weird about it is that it can get a little sterile live. You
Okay.
really have to run those things through a cab. I think people that just go direct, the first 4 rows of people from the stage back are missing the show.
Right.
That's my only complaint with an Axe FX or a Kemper. Like, I'm going to start doing a Torpedo Live and running a direct cab sim signal from my Torpedo Live to the front of house. And we're going to mic the cabs and do the Torpedo Live thing so we can blend it and have a little more of the room. But I will always have stage volume because those first few rows of people that are in front of the room, like in front of the PA, all they're going to hear is your PA, your monitor mix. And if you're not running a monitor mix and you just got ears in, they're not only hearing drums. Yeah. They're only hearing some of it. So that's my only gripe with that. I say good for you, dude. Do whatever the fuck you want. You know, it's a fucking, in this day and age, bro, you live your life. You be whatever you want to be. You want to be a Kemper guy? Fucking go be a Kemper guy. You know what I mean? Like, I love it. But, so you mentioned pedals, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about the amps for a minute. I worked with Aris Effects and developed a couple of pedals that I have some videos that are coming out pretty soon to talk about them. It's been such a busy time home, and the truth is that all the pedals sold out already, so you can't even get them. So I kind of drug my feet a little bit, but
congrats, by the way.
Thank you. There's the Shapeshifter and the Apollyon right here. So these pedals are an overdrive that goes from your classic Tube Screamer style overdrive. If you crank it, it doesn't quite get to the HM2, excuse me, but it gets close. That like super grindy, over the top noisy thing, it does it a little. Yeah. So I just wanted to have like a pretty wide range of tones built in so you could fucking do the thing. So this is going to be going on my rig. So that is a really cool thing. And this is the Shapeshifter. So it can be used with that pedal, which is what I recommend to everybody, or you can just use it on its own. And what this is this is an EQ, a very simplified version of the whole thing that Dime was doing and all these other people that understand tone do a rectifier platform where this will go in your loop and it's the last thing before it hits your cab. And it's basically got a frequency adjustment, a width, and a plus and minus. And what the plus and minus does is it drives it more or drives it less. Your frequency kind of just shapes your tone just a little bit, and your width kind of decides where it sits within the frequency band that you're in. So it'll either kind of give you more of a low end thing or high end thing, scoop your mids, add more mids. It's literally a glorified, simplified EQ that takes all the hard work out of putting a fucking 40 band EQ in the back of your fucking thing, because you know where that rabbit hole leads. This is just a very simplified version of that, and it's really cool, and I really like it. They did sell out, but we are going to be doing another run of them, hopefully. I'm waiting for these fucking videos to come in, and, you know, Richard kind of gave me some shit this week about it, and, you know, because it's been taking so long, but everything is crazy, you know, and so I'm actually putting my own money into the videos because I believe that these are that good. So, yeah, these are kind of floating around and doing their thing. So they're pretty awesome, and I'm really proud of those. But aside from that, I also love a Maxon 808, and I love a Tube Screamer. You know, like I have a drawer over here in my toolbox that's just filled with fucking pedals, and you know, there's the fucking 808 Plus, which is this thing, the 808X, I think it is, maybe extreme overdrive. This thing's fucking crazy. And then, you know, other than that, there's like fucking 900 overdrives in this thing. Like, we don't need to talk about them all. But that HM2 sound. So, like, there's this company, Sneak Pedals.
Mm-hmm.
This thing called a VHD, which is a VHT clone.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, this thing's fucking wild. Run it through a clean amplifier and push the fuck out of it, and you would think it's a VHT pedal. But yeah, so I got a bunch of shit in here, man. And at the end of the day, it's just we're all achieving the exact same tone, which is something different. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, cool. Well, what else you got for me, dude? What else you want to talk about?
Well, it's kind of funny. We were talking, kind of reminiscing on a lot of the Randall stuff, the Ampeg, the valve state, and you actually have the, you know, the Ampeg VH140C in a box. It is pretty cool. I've noticed the big trend with a lot of, you know, distortion pedals coming out now is preamps of all those classic, you know, 90s amplifiers. So it's like just kind of coming full circle in a way. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, we've only got so much of a platform that we can stand on when it comes to amplifiers. Like, at the end of the day, you're either copying a 5150 or a dual rectifier or a JCM 800 or, you know, a plexi. Like, there's only so many things that you can attribute to these tones. Like, what was it? Was it the Mark IIc that was on the early Metallica stuff?
Yeah, Mark IIc.
Okay. Right. So, I mean, you could really claim that before that, everybody was using the JCM 800s,
yeah,
the Marshall stuff, and then rock and roll was using the plexis and like all that stuff. But like, there's not a lot of formats that people really have to steal from. It's kind of all just modernized, better versions of something that, like you said, started in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. You know? I mean, go back and look at all your favorite records. They probably all have the same fucking amps, you know? And you're right. You know, a lot of it is just rehashing and revisiting things that have already happened. But I mean, that's what we were talking about with being in a band.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing, just sound, you know? Which,
obviously, you know, talking about rehashing, the HM2 thing is spiraled out of control almost.
Yeah.
To the point to where I've had several different versions over the years. The only one I have at the moment is the Doom Saw, which I got to do the video or whatever for. On here lately, I've actually been really into, like what we mentioned earlier, like the DS1, like the dime DS1 kind of tones, like Withered and Grave. Like I don't know. I've just been really digging into that lately. I guess because my buddy Michael Klein, I've got like several pedals made by him now. He did one called the Husk for the band Withered, because that's kind of their signature thing is the DS1, you know, kind of getting that grindy kind of distortion sound. So he kind of made them their own version, has like a low pass filter and stuff on it. It's pretty sick. So I've just been obsessing with that sound here lately.
I mean, for me, I go back and forth. I love tight tone. I love, you know, I love like a really heavy gated kind of rhythm tone where it's like precise. But man, I also really like an Alice in Chains kind of like rock driven metal tone. I really like that whole thing. Like Will plays in that band End, and they have just a fucking stab you in the face, like noisy, loose HM2. It's a HM2 into a 5150, and it's just fucking brutal to watch live, you know? And it's funny, Ken Susi popped in here as we're sitting here talking. I see. You know, they have a very particular tone too. When we toured with them, you know, Ken was using a KSR, I think, when we toured together, and Buzz was using the EL34 5153 50 watt, and they sounded incredible. Two very different sides of the spectrum. The KSR is super precise and accurate and very particular, and then the 5150 is a very like super driven, you know, like can be noisy but can also be tight kind of tone. Yes, it can. You are brutal, Ken. You are brutal. And, you know, like I've had the opportunity to tour with a lot of people, and some guys are using helixes, and some girls are using amps, and some people are using different. And it's just, it's all. You can get good tone from everything if you show long enough to play it and learn what your hands do in conjunction with what you're playing. And, you know, I mean, we're going to make it to guitars eventually. Like, we're going to get there. And I have a few that I like specifically brought in that I wanted to talk about. One of them being the new Jeff Loomis that I got that's fucking out of hand, right? And I also have some like cool 90s and early 2000s stuff in the room too. But dude, like, preference. It's preference of your ear. It's the music that you're creating. It's, you know, what room you're playing in, what the stage sounds like. It's preference. There's so many things that affect your tone, and there's a lot of fucking misconceptions and bullshit too. There really is. People try to explain to me that tone woods don't make a difference, and like, there's a really good producer like Mark Lewis that does not believe that tone woods matter, or believes that tone woods matter and that basswood, basswood, whatever it is, sounds like total shit. And there's other guys that believe that doesn't fucking make a bit of difference and it doesn't matter at all. And it's like, well, if you give me a maple body and a maple neck, or a maple top and a maple neck and an ash body and a maple board, it's going to be the brightest thing I've ever played in my life. And if it's mahogany, it's going to be more round and more fluid sounding. And there's a reason why certain guitars are made of certain things, like ash does a certain thing. Like, there are certainly different attributes to those things, but at the end of the day, it's whatever works for what you're playing and what your hands do. And it's fucking opinions. It's opinions. And those, to me, are the things that start muddying things up, because somebody can get a great tone out of a Kemper, and then some fucking, you know, like gatekeeper, like glass pusher, oh guys, I don't think that they're very good. And it's like, well, I mean, lots of people sound great with them. And then people will hate you and hate your tone based on an opinion and not on the way you actually sound. And that shit bums me out.
Well, let's, without further ado, let's finally dig into some of the fine custom Jacksons and collectibles and good.
We're going to get there. So, on tour, I use a lot of the pro models because they're a little more inexpensive and I don't mind breaking them. Right?
Sure.
But I haven't been able to break them yet. So right now, all my Warriors are at my Guitar Tech's place because we're getting ready to do a tour, so I'm having everything taken care of, right? But at the house, I have a bunch of really cool shit that I got recently. So we'll start with a couple of custom shops and a couple of USAs, and then we'll talk about one or two pro models that I have here. And then I also have a concept series, Jackson. So we're going to mainly talk about the Jackson stuff. I started working with them, you know, about a year now. And I do have 3 custom shops on deck that are getting built right now because I like to, you know, don't think I get them all for free. I do spend some of my own money on this stuff. You know, I own a business and I spend a lot of money on guitars aside from that. So it's definitely an expensive habit, but it's a good habit. So let's talk about this one. This is something I got in the mail a couple of days ago, and I've been posting about it recently. This fucking guy right here.
There it
is a custom shop, Jeff Loomis, USA Kelly. You can see it's the full custom, right? Got a Floyd. This has Jeff's Seymour Duncan pickups in it. It's got this burnt ash top. Look at how fucking cool that top is, right? Gloss back. It's got a gloss neck, and surprisingly enough, it sounds different than I would have assumed it would. It's got like just like a little bit more of a dry sound to it, which is kind of surprising. And came tuned in C, and I haven't really had an opportunity to do too much with it just yet. This thing sounds sick. And that's the, by the way, that's the driftwood. Little out of tune here, but she just came in the mail. Oh, it's a little flat. She just came in the mail, and I've been beating the dog piss out of it for the past 2 days. But yeah, man, I mean, still out of tune. But give me a minute here, because I was playing it a bunch today. There we go. I'm really actually surprised at like this thing just sounds crazy, and I don't know how good or bad it sounds through this 50-cent microphone that it's going into, but I'm really impressed with this.
It's translating a lot better than you would think, honestly.
Yeah, well, I have good tone. What can I say?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just like, this thing just like, the guitar itself is very, very well built, really extremely like precise, I guess you can say. Everything feels like it's exactly where it's supposed to go, and like it also doesn't quit. And I don't know if a lot of people understand what that means. I say that a lot, and what I mean by that is when I push it to do things that are difficult for guitars to do, like certain dive bombs, like any of that dimey kind of dive bomby shit, like guitars aren't really supposed to do that. Like it does it all. It does not quit, man. And I've tried to like, the first thing I do with every guitar I get is I try to figure out a way to break it, right? Because you want to, like, oh, fuck this company, it's all bullshit. But like, I haven't found anything that this thing doesn't do really well. It just, it wants to do it all. And like the scrapey shit that we do, like I can't get over how like it's fucking cool. This is a cool one. So I love this guitar. All right, so this one's cool. So let's look at an old one.
All right.
Toss this one back in the case. So now this is something that I actually picked up recently, and I don't know how well in tune it is because I haven't been fucking with it for the past couple of days. But this is an early 2000s Jackson Custom Shop USA Ghost Flame.
Mm-hmm.
Headstock, neck through. I got this one, my buddy Jeff, that, you know Jeff.
Yeah.
He had the RR, the Rhodes and the, what is the Rhodes and the Warrior? Not Warrior, Kelly. He had a Kelly with the same paint.
Yeah.
And he kind of turned me on to the guy who had them because he knew I was looking for one of these. But you can instantly hear how much brighter and like nasally it is, you know? It's like got a totally different tone. The neck is a little bigger and like chunkier, but I mean, but it's still like super accurate and this thing just like does all the right stuff. It's just different animal. You know what I mean? So this one's really cool. Again, USA. Now let's jump into a pro model. I have this. My wife is. We have like a door between the kitchen and the little studio space here that is like blocked by amplifiers, and see me through there. She's looking at the wall to see what guitars I hung up to take out. My wife knows more about guitars than a lot of guitar players do. Trust me. You know, saying things like, "Oh, what's the fret radius on that new guitar?" I'm just like, "Oh my god." This is a Charvel Pro model, Mexican made. It's a DK24 Modern, is what they call this one. This thing sounds awesome. It would probably sound better if it was in tune. Hang on. Have you fucked with any of the Jackson Pro model stuff yet?
I have. Our local guitar shop is like kind of a mom and pop. I don't think we have any guitar centers in West Virginia at all.
Okay.
But one of the few brands they do carry is Jackson, and they actually had a bunch of X series and a couple Pro series, and even the X series, I
have one here.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, like for a long time, I believe Ibanez was the leading import, like entry-level guitar company. Like if you grabbed an Ibanez, it felt good. But I think they've fallen off of that a little bit with QC over the years.
Yeah.
I think Jackson picked up. I think Jackson's entry-level stuff and their pro model stuff, for bang for the buck, like you cannot go wrong. You know? Like they just sound great and they feel great. The neck shape on this is almost like obscenely fast for what it is. Like it just does the thing.
Yeah.
You know? And like it doesn't get in the way. it's just a really cool guitar. And it's kind of got like a classic-y. The reason I haven't changed the pickups in this, it's got like that like Metallica meets Megadeth meets like 90s metal tone that I like from like a 6-string guitar. I grew up on Metallica.
Yeah.
You know, so like it just has like that's that gunk. I don't know. I like this guitar a lot.
What do you know what pickups are in that one? Is it like a full?
I think it's probably a distortion.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my favorite classic pickups. You know, here's something crazy. We always talk about like how Fenders are not meant for metal. I mean, Jim Root might have an argument for that.
Right.
But I bought this mod shop and I tried these things called the sawbuckers. Right? I had this, bro. Holy shit! Right? Back to that whole you never know what you're gonna get until you try it thing. Like, listen to that. You know. They sound great, you know, and it's a fucking Strat, and it shreds. You know what I mean? My wife is looking at me like I have too many guitars and not enough money in the bank, and she's fucking so right. But yeah, this thing's cool.
Dude, I fucking love Strats. I mean, how can you not?
Yeah. I mean, you can go from John Mayer to Yngwie Malmsteen on one guitar. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I mean, believe me, I love John Mayer more than I like John Mayer more than I like Yngwie Malmsteen. I don't like all fancy bullshit. We'll do it. All right. Let's take a trip to the early 90s. Since we were talking about Ibanez stuff, everybody probably remembers I used to work with them for a long time.
Sure.
This is a 91 550 that I had Ken Susie's brother actually refinished for me. It's got I don't know if you can see the flame on the neck at all, a little bit right there, but it's got a really, really nice, like, flamed neck. And this thing, right now, it's not playing where I'd like it to play. It needs a little love, and it's also wildly out of tune. Let's see if I can get it in tune here. But this is one of the ones that, like, yeah, I don't work with Ibanez anymore, but I'll never get rid of this guitar. You know?
Yeah.
I have a couple hidden away. They're like, for the lack of a better term, little gems that I'll never have. You like that little pun right there?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it to sit. It's being super cranky. I'm just going to try and tune it in E flat. Let me see. So what's your main guitar?
It kind of rotates out. I go through phases with each one. Here lately, I've been trying to spend the most time with. Do you follow the Does It Doom page at all? Mm-hmm. So he worked with this custom shop called Woodbine, and one of their signature things is like it's sort of a replica of the first act DC, right? That double cut, okay. Like a lot of bands in the early 2000s were playing. Yep. Well, so they kind of combined and made a brand called Woodwright, and they basically just made some copies of those old DCs, and it's made out of the Reverend factory.
Okay.
So I mean, they're fucking killer. It's like the best Les Paul that I've never got to play or something.
Yeah, my problem with Les Pauls is like having the fastest car on earth that you can only drive on one road. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Les Paul does like a really particularly good thing, but it's only good for one thing. You know what I mean? So it's never really been my go-to, but I know why people like them. But all right, so this thing is completely stock. I've never changed anything out of this guitar. You know what I mean? Like, it's just got the tone that makes you want to do the 80s thing. And you can hear, like, it's got that, like, PAF kind of, like, no bottom end, really thin. And I love this guitar. It's definitely playing like dog shit right now. It needs to be set up like the neck is bowed, and that's one of the biggest problems with having a collection is something is guaranteed to get like neglected. So this one's been getting neglected a little bit, but this one's cool. What else we got? What do I want to talk about? Is there anything you want to see? Anything custom shop stuff? Or I have a concept series Jackson V. That's really cool.
Let's check out the concept series.
Okay, this thing's awesome. So big and pointy and fucking hard to play when you're sitting down. Which it's this crazy camo finish. It's got a nice Floyd in it. It's got Seymour Duncans in it. I actually have. We'll talk about some pickups in a little bit because I don't know if you know or not, but I work with Guitarmery, and
yeah.
I not only am I an endorsed artist, but I've recently started doing some A&R work with them. So if you're an artist and you want to work with the company, I'm the gatekeeper. So it's been a trip, man. It's been interesting to work with a company on that level, and I'm really excited. But Mike just made me these for one of my 6 strings, and these may end up going into the
nice.
Loomis, but these are called Fallout finish. So they're metal finish, but I think I'm going to do a set of those for this. So we're kind of working on that right now. And, you know, my signature set or whatever. But let's talk about this guitar. So Jackson, like I said, they have some really great entry-level stuff, and they have some really great high-end stuff, but they were kind of missing that middle of the road thing a little bit, where they didn't have that $2,000 to $2,500 guitar range going on. Everything was like $900 to $1,500, or your $600 to $400 to $600, like your X series thing, or then you're in the custom shop USA world where everything's like $5,000 or $6,000.
Yeah.
So they want to create a line of guitars that are an import that have a little bit higher end, I guess, hardware and pickups and finishes. It's got Luma inlays on it. It's bound. I'm going to take my wedding ring off because 7 strings are impossible to play with that thing on. And so it really is like a pretty incredible guitar for the money. You know, you're getting some custom shop options, and you don't get like, you know, sometimes you buy an import on the lower end and you turn the tuners and they feel a little crunchy, and like you know, it takes 40 turns to get like the thing to even get anywhere close to moving. But these are kind of built with the higher end thing in mind, and you are paying a little bit more, but like it does the thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I gotta turn the amp off. It's warming up. this guitar, again, it's tuned down in drop A and it needs bigger strings. I just got it in the mail like a week ago. Maybe a little longer than that now. Like, it sounds big. It sounds like enormous. It plays awesome and like surprisingly good. I mean, again, it's not a cheap guitar. It's a $2,100 guitar, but it feels like a custom shop or a USA. It's got really great fretwork. It's built well. It's got all the right things that you want if you're paying that kind of money. I would say more towards the $3,000 feel than the $2,000 feel, which is pretty great. And it's a Korean build, and it does the right stuff. You know what I mean? So this is going to end up in my live rig for the US stuff. I'm not going to take a fucking V to Europe because it's going to get destroyed in, on the or whatever.
Right.
But it'll make its way into my world in the US, and I am going to change the pickups because I don't love the pickups that are in here. But it feels incredible. So I'm going to be like excited to hear how it feels and sounds in my rig. And this is the first 26.5-inch guitar that I played on that I really like. Usually I hate anything over 25.5, but this one feels really great. So I'm into this guitar. I like it a lot, and I'm going to try to break it. So we'll have this one on the road soon.
That's cool.
All right, let's do an X series.
Sure.
They hooked me up with one of those. We'll do an X series, and then we'll do another Pro model. So this is their DK X series.
Oh yeah.
Right. Reverse headstock. I'm a sucker for pink, so you put pink on a guitar, and I want to own it. Only thing I really dislike on this guitar is the pickups.
Yeah.
And other than that, like, it plays good, it feels good, it stays in tune. It's got the Jackson licensed Floyd Rose on it, and like, it does the stuff. And for fucking $600, it's fucking real. And I think it sounds good. I mean, for the pickups, for me, they're like a little too scoopy, but they really feel good, And it's one of those things where you can get, a good sound out of the case right out of the box with this guitar. Yeah. So it's good. Like, it's a cool guitar. For the fucking money, you can't bitch about it.
No doubt.
The neck profile's sick. The neck joint feels good. Like, everything about this guitar is cool. So this is a good one. Fuck, there's so many guitars. Did my kid go to bed? Okay. This is the Soloist Pro model. I had this on my page a bunch. This will be going to Europe with me. That sounds real low. Uh-oh. I don't even know if we're going to... This fucker is way out. Hang on. Hear that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Trying to play Mammoth on it, or?
Apparently, I was. Oh,
Yeah, the X series that I last got to try was one of those cool like swirl paint job ones
oh yeah,
with the satin finish, and
red, right? The red one.
yeah, they actually had the red and they had the black and white swirl. So I tried both of them out, and like I was incredibly impressed, especially with the feel of the neck. Um, honestly, made me really really need one.
Yeah. You know what I just realized? I
Hmm.
started setting up to drop it into G, and so I guess we're not going to get an opportunity to play it, but
Gotcha.
let's talk about it at least. Like as you
Sure.
can see, I'm starting to jump because I'm trying to drop. I'm putting it in drop A. But so this guitar has some options on it that a lot of their stuff doesn't have. It's got the locking tuners on a guitar with a Floyd, and I fucking love that combination because I'm lazy. So the less work I have to put a string on a guitar, the better. It's got some really nice it's like a plastic, almost like abalone looking kind of like binding on the body and the headstock. The neck is unbound. It's got the little mini piranha tooth inlays instead of the big shark inlays one. It's got an ash top with a mahogany body.
Hmm.
It's got that like I don't know if you played one of those Dave Warriors yet.
Not yet.
It's got this similar neck shape that it almost has that like dare I say like universe UV kind of to it. Like it's real thin but fast and not too shouldery.
Yeah.
Reverse stock, and this one's great. So this is a cool one, and apparently I'm gonna get to play it for you. And then I guess the last one we talk about, so we're not here until 4 in the morning. This is a 6-string custom shop Jackson early 2000 or early teens, I think 15 maybe. It's got a roasted maple neck, roasted maple board. Chicago Music Exchange actually did these as like a limited run,
Hmm.
and I really like this guitar a lot. It plays good, it feels good, and it stays in tune unlike the other ones. Yeah, this guitar is fucking real cool. And this is like another thing about the custom shop is they do all the right stuff. Like they do it all. So it's a toss up for me. Like the USA stuff and the custom shop stuff is obviously going to be the best of quality.
Sure.
But the pro model stuff and the import stuff are great in the same way with amplifiers, right?
Mhm.
Iconic, Iconic, also great. My Driftwood, yeah, that's great too. Different worlds, right? But it doesn't mean that it doesn't sound good. It's just a different kind of thing altogether. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to bring on tour this year. I think amp wise, I know guitar wise, it just depends on what I have before I leave.
Sure.
But yeah, man, I love all of the stuff that Jackson has blessed me with. This one I bought with my own money. I bought the Loomis at like an artist discount. But yeah, I'm really impressed with the line. Like it's really cool. And it's funny that you mentioned that X series because they were like, "Oh, we're gonna send you this X series," and I was like, I don't want it." And then I got it, and I was like, "Why didn't I want it? Like this is good, you know?"
Sorry. I don't want it.
Yeah, I don't want this. And then I got it, and I was like, "Okay, I'll have this. This is fine," you know.
Yeah.
But whatever. Spoiled, man. You know, I've. It's just. just love gear. So we can talk about it all day, but
Oh, sure.
yeah,
Man,
I mean, I guess that's it for guitars for right now.
I'll definitely have to try to hit y'all up for some more guitarmery pickups in the future, because I've got one
Yep.
now in my 7-string. I've got it was one of Devin's cauterizers.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, that's an unfortunate situation.
yeah, but
Well, we're not doing it anymore. Devin, isn't working with us, but those
sure.
pickups were really, really good. But I mean, hang on, I'm gonna look here. This is just so you have some examples of, the stuff that we do. This is a import set of mine with like a Les Paul style cover, like your standard issue, like metal, I guess brushed steel looking kind of cover. This is another one of those. I have a lot of the pickups here because I have a lot of guitars that have to go in that you can see I've been lazy about. It's just the standard black 6-string set. I just have a couple of cool ones. This is cool. Like, I love the, vintagey kind of, zebra kind of. And to me, like, every set of pickups that I own could be that, and I would be happy. What else do I have in here? This is a black chrome set with like a full cover, like EMG kind of look. Yeah. Yep, we did a set of those, like high polished, standard black pickup. And then this is cool. This is a 6-string that's actually modeled after exactly that Les Paul look. Like, that's like a legit, like, right in there. It's super, super shiny. Makes my ADHD really happy. What else do I have in here? I know I sent some stuff up. This is just a set of my pickups in the 6-string with that cream and black. And then, and this is a white set of my SIGs that are, I think I'm going to give these to Tim to go into one of his guitars. What else? I think that might be it. I think that might be all I have here right now. But I mean, we do like cool wood bobbin stuff. We do like custom runs of like crazy like sparkle and like pink, and like we do a ton of different color and different like combinations of things. I'm really stoked on these like wooden bobbin covers that we've been doing lately. Mike got like this hooked up with this company that makes the like small blocks of burl that I think knife makers buy them to make like scales for knives. And Mike has been buying up these like crazy, they're like burl with like epoxy filling and like all these different colors, and he's been doing bobbins with them, and they've been like unbelievably cool. So if you get the opportunity, like, go on my page or the Guitar Marine page. Mike's always posting really cool stuff, and here lately they've been like really, really nice. So I'm pretty stoked on those. I'll talk to Mike. Maybe we can work something out for you and get you a set of my pickups, and I'll pay for them, and we'll do some kind of cool bobbin. Like if you have like a flame top guitar or like anything like that, and we'll get you a set and get you set up with one of those. I'll work with them on that.
That'd be cool.
I'm trying to think of what else. Happy Cable Stuff. It's another company I work with. This is one of their like uncovered cables, because they do like semi-custom stuff where you can order different colors and different, like, this is like this light gray colored one that they did, but this one, if you look close, it's got like a it's almost like a poly or like a plastic, the shit that they use to cover snakes, like when you get a snake, like a wire snake, and it's got a bunch of cables in it, and they put that thing, it's like that sheeting for the outside. Cable's doing some cool shit. Yeah, I mean, there's there's so much gear that we can sit here and talk about. I don't even know where to go with it at this point because we covered a lot of the bases on a lot of the things that I like, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be all I got. I don't know. I don't know what else you want to talk about.
What just because I know somebody will ask. What about picks and strings? What are your all's? Do you all have endorsements for those?
Ernie Ball,
Okay.
and the standard Dunlop stuff. I use on my drop A stuff. I use a 9 through 46 with a 64, and then
Okay.
I was dabbling with a 68 for a little while, but I like a little bit of a heavier low string. And then on my G stuff, I use a 10 through 74. It's a 10 through 52 with a 74 on top. And I always use Ernie Ball stuff. I like their stuff a lot, and we've been working with them for a while. And then picks. What's up, Pete? I'll come say goodnight. I'm almost done here. Okay, I love you too, buddy. I'll be right up. The old kiddo.
Oh yeah.
So standard issue, 1mm Jazz 3XL, little point on the end. I like these a lot. At home, I practice with these picks with this company called Chicken Picks.
Oh, okay, cool.
And they send me stuff all the time, and they're really fucking nice. And the dude Eppo that owns the company is sick, and they're weird. They're like these weird little picks. You see, they got like, this is a 2.5mm pick, and it's little cutaways, and the material is sick. But what it does is, because it's such a thick, stiff pick, but it has these little cutaways, it forces me to work with the bevels and to move my different positions that don't always. G'day, Mike. I'll talk to you later, brother. That don't always. That you don't always have to do with a thinner pick. Like, you almost feel like you can force a thinner pick through the strings in whatever fashion you want when you're really digging in. At least I do. But this forces me to play a little softer, and it forces me to use a little bit more finesse.
Yeah.
And if expensive, I would play them live every night. But I lose, drop, and throw picks. Fucking job.
Right.
So I do love them, and occasionally on the road I'll bring a couple with me, and if my hands are tired or whatever, but when I warm up I use these because it does force me to play with a little more finesse. What else? I guess that's it.
Those kind of remind me of the Dunlop Flow picks a little bit.
It's similar, but the Flow pick is one kind of doesn't have like a real edge to it, and I don't mind them. I've used them before, but they're also kind of slippery a little. They don't have any grit to it. And those Dunlop picks, the Tortex ones, it's like it's got boogers on it. Like, it just kind of sticks to your fingers almost, And then and then the Chicken Picks actually have like a print on it that kind of gives you a grip. And the material's interesting. It almost feels like ceramic, but it's kind of hard to explain. But I do enjoy their picks a lot. Cables we talked about. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. That's what I use. I use Azul. I use Polytune. Live, I use the Dunnable Eidolon, which is Dave Davidson came out. It's a reverb delay boost pedal, and it's specifically made for leads and solos, and it's made to give you that bump, right? So I was having some issues on tour with it not doing the thing that I wanted with the getting enough volume out of the amp. This thing, the boost is like, it's ridiculous. Like, it fucking knocks you up a few dB. So that thing's cool. I use a Pitchfork in a couple of different sections live. I mean, that's what I'm using on this European tour. And then I'm going to use my Apollyon OD. And I'll probably also have a Max on my board because I always keep one as a backup.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Did you did you ever get that Boss switcher up and
I
running?
did. I did get that, and I used it on the last tour, and I loved it.
Nice.
The part with that though is I want to 4-cable it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the one that I bought, you can do it, but I didn't realize how much of a project it is. So I didn't 4-cable it on the last one. I ran everything into the front of the head, which made my delays a little bit dirty, and it kind of wasn't everything I hoped it would be, but it worked. But going to Europe, I've streamlined. I literally just have an OD, that Etalon, and the pitchfork. And what I did with the Etalon is I kind of found a tone that's somewhere in between like a dotted eighth delay. So it's not too over the top. It's a little more like hall reverby, but like with a delay feel. And then I just spiced it up with a little bit of reverb. And the reason I did that is because I can use it for solos and leads. And then when I'm not playing a solo in a song, I can just reach down real quick and turn the boost down and then just use it as like a nice wet effect for any kind of leads or like stringy sounding stuff that I'm playing.
Right.
And I just wanted to streamline it because I didn't want to bring a big ass pedal board to Europe with me, you know?
No, absolutely. I get it.
Yeah.
I despise tap dancing. Even when I had the tube head, I always used either like I had the Line 6 Pod Go and the HX effects, and I would use some sort of multi effects or whatever just for the sake of switching, and I like 4-cable or whatever.
I did that with one of those Eventide H9s for a little while.
Oh yeah.
And I had like a little controller for that, and I liked it. But I really like analog effects, man.
Yeah.
I think a good analog effect running through a good fucking amp with an effects loop, it just changes the game for me. It sounds a little bit more gritty and natural, which I really enjoy. So that's kind of the idea with all of this. It can 4-cable. People make it seem like it's so much worse than it really is. It's 4 cables. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. But I mean, now you got a Kemper, so you don't have to do that thing anymore. You know what I mean? And another great thing about a Kemper, and another great thing about an Axe Effects, and one of the is like there's no dance. You program it all and
Sure.
voices. You know what I mean? And to me, that's eliminating the dance is a huge factor in why I would consider using the Kemper Live. But now I've found a much more simplified version because of this pedal that Dave did, and because using the pitchfork and finding little ways to cut corners on certain things where I don't have to do all of that shit, and we can get a pretty close tone to the record with those. So it works for now until I can't. And then when I can't, I'll make the decision about maybe throwing Kemper in a rack and just using it as a I guess like just an effects unit behind my amp. Marshy's here. Marshy from the IR. Consistency for in-ear monitors. True. Very true. Like that's a very true thing. And what he's saying is true, because when you're using mics on cabs and shit like that, you are very much having to do that dance with your in-ears. But Marshy may have missed before, we're going to be using the Torpedo Live. So that will give us that consistency every night that you get out of the Kempers. It's just an extra step, right? It's a little more of an expense, an extra step in comparison to what you guys do with the Kempers. And I've seen Marshy's band play probably more than any other band outside of my own band, because we tour together, not as much as I'd like to, but we tour pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And, their tone is great every fucking night with Kempers running direct, and it's like I said, like proof is in the pudding. You know what I mean? They sound great every night. And but he does have a point. That's another very smart reason to use a Kemper, you know, especially if you don't want to do what we do and, you know, stack the fucking rig to the ceiling and have 900 different things, you know. Another thing that I use live that we forgot to talk about is I threw a DBX in my rig, and it's a compressed gate, and you know, it goes back to that thing we were talking about with the Sid did with the sonic maximizers for a little while, but this is a little bit drier than that. You know, I use a little bit of the gain at the end of my signal chain, and then I use the gate in the loop, which really tightens everything up, gets any amp hiss out of it. Like, I'm dead quiet, and that's a Tim thing. Like, Tim brought that to the table, and when Will was building his new rig, he discovered how good it is. You know, the gate on it is really, really great, and it's one of those things that not all gates perform the same into the back of an effects loop. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to use like a decimator, like, you have to use the G2 because the other version of it doesn't work in there. But the DBX is a really cheap solution. It's a couple $100. You can kind of tweak your gain going into the back of or into the cab, like as the last hit before the cab. And the gate and the compressor is even a little bit fun sometimes too. Like, you can play with that too. But it's a cheap piece of equipment that's effective. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's like anything else. If you use it and you spend time with it, you'll find something good, or you won't, you know? So, yeah, that's another thing that we use live that I forget to mention a lot of times when I do these rig discussions. But that's a really cool, interesting piece. Like, surprisingly better than I thought. Tim was like, you got to try this. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, why? What? What is this thing? And he's like, no, dude, I'm telling you. And I tried it, and he was fucking spot on right.
Yeah.
You know, it really, really was. Like, that thing makes a huge difference in our rig. So, and me and Tim both use them. So.
Oh yeah. I may have to try to find one of these days.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you can just go get them in any pro audio section at any music store. It's a pretty common thing. Apparently, a lot of DJs and, like, you know, folks that are like looking for a way to compress their whatever it is they're running out of and into, like, they use those as like a pretty steady thing. Like, it's something that's widely available. I don't think there's, like, I don't even know if they make a sonic maximizer anymore, but I do believe they make that DBX.
Oh yeah. Well, man, I know we both got to tuck our kids in and all that. Good night, but so we'll close this out the same way I normally close all these out, and just a simple top 4 death metal bands or albums.
It could very well be the same thing. Top 4. I mean, even though everybody says they're a grind band, I'm still going to say Heartwork is very important to the death metal community, and Carcass is, like, probably my #1 favorite band.
Sure.
Say Carcass, Heartwork, Obituary, The End Complete. I fucking love that record. Top 4. This is tough. A lot. I was running through, like, real death metal stuff. Pierce from Within, you know, that's fucking top tier record. Suffocation. And I'm gonna say it's Slaughter the Soul. You know, first real melodic death. So that'll be my top 4. And Cannibal Corpse is up there too. There's a lot of interchangeable records. That's why I was kind of going back through it. Yeah. You know, you grab any one of those early Cannibal Corpse records, or even some of the newer ones. You could throw in a bunch of the Fetus stuff in there. You know, I really like a lot of the Fetus stuff. Like, Killing on Adrenaline is such a fucking banger of a record. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. Human Remains is another band that could go in there for me. That Using Sickness as a Hero record, like. Oh, yeah. But my top 4 is a pretty good one. You could throw. I might go so far as to throw Gateways to Annihilation in there, because that's like my favorite more record.
Yeah.
You know, that's a banger. But you know, there's a lot. But I'll stick with. I stand by my word. I'm gonna stick with my top 4 for now.
It's a good list.
Yeah. So, cool, man. Well, thank you so much for having me, dude. I had a great time.
Dude, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and kind of nerd out with us a little bit. I'm sure plenty of people loved it, except maybe the people that probably would have liked the gear talk earlier on, but they can watch it later.
I mean, dude, you know what, man? Like, can't give them what they want all the time. Sometimes you got to make them wait. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Hey, man, I appreciate you very much. I really enjoyed being here, and you know, thanks for having me. And everybody, come out and see us. Well, because we're finally touring again. We go to Europe. We're going to be in Europe for a couple weeks, and then we come back from Europe. We do Australia, Japan, some Southeast Asia dates, Central America, Mexico, and then we just locked in a tour for September that we're going to announce soon. So we'll be back in the U.S. supporting a pretty cool band in September. So come out and hang out with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man. And everybody, please check out Fit for an Autopsy. Buy the records, go to the shows, buy the shirts, all that good stuff. And if you feel like checking our stuff out, we got a link on our profile if you want to check out any of our stuff.
Yeah, do that. Go check out his.
Awesome, man.
All right,
you have a good one, bud.
You too. Thanks, man.
All right, later.